the director of content for Elite Prospects. He joins us from the World Junior Hockey Championships in the nation's capital. Mr. Cam Robinson, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, buddy.
Same to you, fellas. Great to see you. Good to see you, Jay Pat.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We're going to talk about the calamity that is this Canadian World Junior team in a moment, but we start with the Vancouver Canucks, Cam, and our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Is this season cursed?
Somebody's out there not knocking on wood, maybe, hey? Something's ripe in Denmark. So, it's been a tough go, and I think that it's one of those things. Last year, nothing could go wrong, and this year, not a lot's going right. And life without Quinn Hughes is a dark and scary place, and I don't know how long that team can tread above water without him.
See, this is what it's come to. Cam can't fathom a Canucks world without Quinn Hughes, that he had to get halfway across the country, just had to get out of here, doesn't want any part of it.
Had to escape it. So, 3 weeks or so for Hughes, what do you think would be weathering the storm here? Without
500 would be spectacular if you can do that without the arguably Hart Trophy leading kind of player, the guy that impacts the team the most in the league. If you could go 500, I think that you would call that a win. This team has had a really hard time picking up extra points in the extra frame, and losing Hughes is only going to hurt that as well. So you got to find a way to win some games in regulation. Obviously, Pettersson being out too isn't going to help matters. They're going to have to scratch and claw. They're going to have to try to win 2-1 games, 3-2 games. They're going to need big goaltending performances. They're going to need guys to step up. That means Brock Besser's got to keep scoring. JT's got to get off the schneid. They got to find a way to score by committee a little bit, and then have those role players maybe step up and get hot. And the defense, though, we talk about it all the time, right? There is no replacing Quinn Hughes. And so it's just going to have to be trying to batten down the hatches and reduce and limit the chances against as much as he can.
What do you think, Jeff? Would 500 over the next 3 weeks, what does that do to their playoff predicament?
I think, look, they wouldn't have a trophy to skate around the ice with, but if they could get 500 through the next 3 weeks, I'd almost commission a trophy for them. I think that would be a massive achievement for this group. Again, those final 5 minutes against Seattle the other day was a glimpse into the future here, I think, a little bit. I mean, not that drastic perhaps, but I think we all have to be prepared to live with some mistakes that are going to wind up in the back of the net. So given the schedule and who's missing in this lineup, Cam was right. I look at Thatcher Demko. It's go time now. He hasn't been terrific. JT Miller's been way too quiet here since his return. There are guys that can help this team. I don't know what carry them, but I would sign off on a 500 run over the next 8 or 10 games for certain.
What about Miller, Cam? What do you think? Do you think he can finally find his game here? What have you seen from him? What's been missing?
Yeah, he can find his game, and maybe it's just now Pettersson's out of the lineup. They apparently, Petey lights it up when JT's out, and maybe JT will wake up with Petey out. But I think it's between the ears, and it's something we've talked about for a few of these players, is that he needs to get out of his own head and just go be a bully out there. That's when he plays his best hockey, is when he's bullying guys. He's in on the forecheck. He's taking pucks hard to the net with those power moves, and he's going to get a greasy goal. He's going to get something off his knee or a bang and a rebound. It doesn't have to be walking downhill and sniping it bar down to get things rolling. You just got to get going. So I do think that he can find that level. And I think that in a situation like this, without Hughes, without Pettersson, it's he is the leader. He's always been kind of that emotional leader on this club, but now he is the leader in the room right now and out on the ice. And so he's got to wear that. And maybe that's added pressure when he's already struggling a little bit. But I think hopefully he can use that and turn that into a motivator to really kind of gear up and get together for the boys and get it moving.
All right, let's switch gears. You're in Ottawa. You're covering the World Juniors. Anybody that's watching this can see that you've got some nice earth tones going here. Matt and I are sort of black and whitish. No red anywhere to be seen. This isn't out of protest, but my goodness, it has been tough to watch on television. I can't imagine that it's any better there in person for Canada. The loss to Latvia was an incredible storyline, but some tough slogging against Germany last night. 3-0 a final, but really a 1-0 hockey game, and then a fortunate bounce that gave them a little bit of breathing room.
For the record, I considered maroon here.
Yeah.
Well, how can you not love the Latvian effort?
Fair enough.
In this tournament? Cam, over to you.
First thing first, like what a pro segue there, J-Pat. Like that was phenomenal. It has been very difficult for the Canadians to not necessarily generate offense, but to finish it off, right? Like they've been able to put up, against Latvia, they had 50 plus shots. Everybody wanted to say they got goal lead. He had a great game against them. No disrespect, not taking anything away from him, but he wasn't forced to make a ton of, 5-bell saves. There's been a lot of kind of spam shooting from the outside, kind of the curling at the top of the circle and just letting it fly without traffic, not penetrating the middle of the ice. They had like one cross slot pass on the power play and they scored in that game. And it's like, well, let's go, boys. Let's move the puck. You got to get it into those high danger areas. You got to get the defenders moving across, and then you got to fire it. And then you got to go attack, looking for rebounds. Go get some, like I just said about JT. Go get some greasy goals. And so talking to those kids after the game, they won 3-0 against Germany. Nobody was satisfied, right? They know that they need to score more goals. I had a little one-on-one chat with McKenna, and he's averaging 14 minutes a night. We saw less than 12 last night, less than 12 when he played Finland. This is a new situation for him when he's so used to playing 20 plus minutes. He's not on the top power play unit. He's not on the top line. He's their most dynamic offensive player. They need to find a way to get him onto the ice more and producing. So I know a lot of people have been kind of ragging on the team for their decisions on who they brought, which, is fair. They left some big names. We talked about it in the past. But I think that there is enough talent on this team to generate and to finish off enough offense to win a gold medal. They're still in a position now. They can win tomorrow night against the U.S. and they're first in their pool. They lose, they're third. But they need to deploy their players in the right way. So we took a step forward in that regard. They got Sam Dickinson out on the top power play. They moved Oliver Bonk into the bumper. Bonk had some choice words for us in the scrum last night. He said, I heard people were saying I sucked as the QB, so they put me back in the bumper, and I felt like he was looking me dead in the eyes. I never said you sucked. I just preferred him in the bumper. That's all. I just prefer him in the bumper. So they're making incremental steps, but you got to get Bradley Nadeau coming downhill where he is a shooter and a finisher. He shouldn't be on the goal line in the power play, and you got to get Gavin McCann more ice time. Maybe they got to put me behind the bench and I'll start kicking these guys.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, please. And we've both got a question about Dave Cameron here in a second, but you say player selection, and I couldn't help but notice the tweet you had, a quote from an NHL executive on Zane Parekh, the Calgary Flames first-round top 10 defenseman being left off this team. Quote, it's unconscionable that the country's top offensive defenseman isn't available to them. They even had a second chance to make up for the mistake, but didn't. This was after he wasn't invited to camp, then he was invited to camp. And Sam Dickinson might turn in to be a fine power play quarterback in the National Hockey League, but Zane Parekh could run an NHL power play right now, couldn't he?
He absolutely could. And, the really interesting thing, too, is that, you didn't bring Parekh because you're like, okay, we're bringing Matt Schaefer. We're going to let Matt Schaefer run wild. Well, Schaefer wasn't even on the top power play either when they finally started the games. In pre-tournament, he got the looks there, and then they went back to Bonk once the game started. And then as soon as Schaefer went out, it's like, oh, boy, now we don't have anyone who can do the things that he did, which is a pretty glaring mark on that decision to only have one player that does those things. And then they also had Sam Dickinson not on any power play units for the first two games. And they were kind of telling him to play mistake-free hockey. Well, why'd you bring Sam Dickinson then? Because he doesn't play mistake-free hockey. He's a thoroughbred. You just let him run and you take the good with the bad. And so, my understanding is that's kind of what they've had to do now is they said, okay, Sam, you go play and do your thing and we'll clean up for your mistakes because they've got a bunch of guys on that blue line that can play defensively and can play physically. So you let the offensive guys run. But you're absolutely right. And that quote, I knew I was going to get it was going to get a lot of traction. And that's why I had to put it out there. But there's a lot of talk and it actually should say that they had three chances because once Schaefer went out, they did have the option. They could have phoned down the road to Saginaw and been like, Zane, come on down. Sorry to Soriminio. You're going to have the Canucks prospect. You're going to have to stay out there, stay off the roster. But they chose not to. They chose to stick with the guys they brought, which is fine. But if you don't win gold, everyone's going to be asking those questions.
You outlined it earlier that lots of shot generation. And look, goalies are there to make stops. That happens. You're not always going to score. So if we try to parse through who isn't producing, that's one thing. Who hasn't performed particularly well, though, in your eyes, through 3 games for Canada?
How long does my session go here? How much time do I have? Yeah. There's a few.
We can extend it if the list is long enough, Cam. We can extend it. So just fire away, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some moments for all the players, right? Like Easton Cowan, I think probably leads the forward group in ice time, and he's a good player, and he's kind of a gritty offensive player who looks to disrupt and disturb and maybe flop a little bit to draw penalties. But he's just been taking a whole bunch of low percentage shots. He hasn't been engaged physically enough, I don't think. Same with a kid like you. They moved Cole Baudouin up onto the first line instead of Bradley Nadeau yesterday. Well, the only reason you're putting him out there is to make space for everybody else because he's a tank, but he's not there to finish. He's not there to create plays. And he wasn't running around banging bodies. Again, Bradley Nadeau, he's not being deployed properly, but this is an AHLer. He's the only kid who's not from the CHL. He's playing pro hockey and he's playing first line minutes in Chicago for the Wolves. And he hasn't really impacted the game. Richie, he's had his moments, but again, you expect more from these guys, especially in some of these more these more cupcake matches against Latvia and Germany. You need them to start getting rolling. I thought McKenna has been their best player other than Schaefer before he got injured. He was trending to be their best player this entire tournament. Carter George, obviously, has been fantastic. He has a lot of goalie at this tournament, but up front, there hasn't been a lot of bright spots. And they know it. The players know it. They're getting a little feisty in the scrums. They're not feeling it, and they're not loving hearing about it either. So everything comes down to tomorrow night against the States. I know it's not the tournament on the line, but you want to face Switzerland in the quarterfinals. You don't want to face Czechia or Sweden even potentially in that spot. So an easier pathway if you can win tomorrow.
Just one quick one on Matthew Schaefer. First of all, how much does his leaving this tournament diminish your enjoyment of watching, arguably the top draft prospect this year? But ultimately, what does that do, if anything, to his draft stock? Or do people just know that he's an exceptional player and this is going to be a blip ultimately on a long and successful career?
Yeah, it definitely impacts my enjoyment of it because he is a very fun player to watch. And he's a great kid, too. I ran into him in the bowels of the rink there yesterday. And, he's still with the team, or he was yesterday anyways. And he's a great kid and he's a tremendous player. And so I'll give a little peek behind the curtain here is that I have an article coming out later today where I polled, every NHL contact I have. And I asked them basically their thoughts on number 1, Hagens versus Schaefer, all anonymous, of course, and got them to vote on it. And I won't give you the final tally, but it is overwhelmingly in favor of Matt Schaefer at this point. So mono early in the season, no big deal. Broken collarbone here, no big deal. And that might end his regular season too, depending on how long it takes for him to get back. If he doesn't make the playoffs, his season could be done. And I still think he's shown and he's done enough that he, depends on who's picking, of course, that he is going to be one of the top couple of picks at the end of the day.
Jeff and I both have a question about Canadian head coach Dave Cameron, who I see is trending on X as we speak. Jeff asked me, what has he won? And I said, I don't know, but I know what he's lost. And that's a World Junior Gold Medal game back in 2011 when a 3-0 lead after 2 periods turned into a 5-3 defeat at the hands of the Russians in Buffalo. I was further perplexed when Oliver Bonk, Radek Bonk's kid, the aforementioned, mentioned to you guys covering it that running the point was a bit of an adjustment for him, that he usually plays the bumper spot. And then further perplexed when Dave Cameron said he was going to change the power play, but canceled practice between the two games, which seemingly would be a good time in a short tournament to work on your power play. Cam, how did Dave Cameron get this gig?
I have no insight on how he got the job. I know he is respected in coaching circles, and he has a resume. He's been a pro coach. There has been some perplexing moments with some of his decision making. I mean, like you said, right? His nickname is Bumper Bonk, right? For London, he plays in the bumper, and he's very good in the bumper. And Sam Dickinson runs the unit at the top, and Easton Cowan is the trigger man. Like they have it in London, and so now last night we saw that, and they moved to it. And first power play, bang, Bumper Bonk, one timer, finishes it from the slot. It still wasn't a great power play throughout the game, I wouldn't say, because I still don't feel like all the players are being utilized in the way they should. And then at even strength, what I mentioned, there's been a lot of decisions that are justifiably being questioned by fans and media. And he's had to answer those questions, and not always with the answers that you were hoping for, or taking those on the chin and being like, yeah, I should have done this or I should have done that. But we're just hoping that they can find a way to ignite the team and then utilize them in the right way. Because like I said earlier, there is enough talent on this team to win a gold medal. Like, their blue line, despite losing Schaefer and leaving those kids at home, they're better than the Americans. They don't have a Z Bouillon. They don't have that number one rock solid guy anymore. But on a whole, it's a better defensive core. And up front, you have loads of first round talent. You have guys who can score. You just have to get them going. And that's his job, right?
Yeah. What are they up against tomorrow in the States?
They're up against a team that is, I would have said clicking until they ran into Finland there, which has been the game of the tournament so far. That was a lot of fun. They've been playing a little loose. The Americans have been playing a little loose defensively, and they've been doing a little bit of run and gun offense here, but they do have a lot of talent, especially that top line. Obviously, Gabe Perreault, he's, for my money, been their best forward. Jimmy Haggins, he's pushing Schaefer. They're going to be 1-2 or 1-2-3 in that, somewhere in that range. And then Ryan Leonard, that physical presence. This is his team. He hasn't really taken off just yet, but I imagine he's going to be saving his best performance for tomorrow night. Trey Augustine, who on a skill basis in net is the most talented netminder at this tournament, but he's been shaky. And the Finns just came right out and said it after their game. They said, we're attacking his glove hand because we felt like that was the best chance to beat him. And then they scored on that overtime goal where he got a piece of it. And you could see he was looking and said, is there a hole in my glove? So they have a ton of talent. I mentioned Z Bouillon. He's arguably the most talented defenseman at this tournament. For my money, the best two-way guy here. So they have guys that can really impact it, but their depth is lacking compared to the Canadians. And so that's where their advantage lies. Carter George is dialed right in. So, give the edge to him right now too in net. But they need their guys down the lineup to step up and produce and kind of eliminate and have those top lines kind of eliminate each other on a scoring basis. And I think if they do that, then they should be able to win. But I'd say the Americans have more confidence coming into this game.
Yeah. Lastly, the Canucks prospects we want to hit on here, Willander and Minio. And I saw a lot of chatter going into the tournament that Swedish defenseman Axel Sandin Pellikka might be the best player here. And I guess I just assumed because he was a right shot offensive defenseman that he ran power plays. And I learned that, no, he actually plays the flank on his club team power play. And that has given Canucks prospect Tom Willander an opportunity to run this Swedish power play. And from what I gather, Cam, he's been one of the best players at the tournament. A word or two about Willander and what he's been up to, because the Canucks must be very pleased seeing this sort of performance.
He's been very strong, as expected. But, he saved his best for that last game where he popped a couple goals, had 3 points, had himself a really strong game. And he's one of these guys that he'll chip in with some offense, but a lot of the time you just don't notice him too much, which is exactly how he wants it to be. Nobody beats him off the rush. He makes quick plays. He retrieves. He gets it out. But you're right. Having an opportunity to play all those power play minutes, and he's been firing the puck from the top because they have been the kind of the umbrella or the triangle boxes kind of collapsed down. They're focusing on that Sandin Pellikka side, Otto Stenberg on the other side too, Felix Unger-Sorum. They have some triggermen, and then it's been Willander at the top who's had all day to get the puck and walk in and snap some shots on net. So it's been really nice to see him, because he hasn't ever had that opportunity at BU. Didn't really get it a lot in Sweden in the J20 either. He's always kind of been a second power play unit guy, and then another just kind of quiet at 5-on-5. So he's played really, really well. I think it's great for Canucks fans that are looking at like some of the players that were drafted in and around him in that class. Zach Benson's already in the NHL. ASP is Sandin Pellikka was drafted later on, and he left the SHL leading all defensemen in points as a 19-year-old, like all defensemen in points, and maybe arguably the top, the third best league in the world. So no, I think Willander is going to be a very solid player for Vancouver. I expect he's going to come out of BU at the end of this year and turn pro and be an option for the Canucks, in 18 months or something like that.
Hey, just before we run, obviously the focus here is Canada-US, but top spot is up for grabs on both sides.
Yeah.
We just talked about Sweden. Nobody talking about the Czechs, and yet they've got a chance to finish top of their. Like, what is this Czech team, and do they have a chance to run the show here?
I believe they're the St. Louis Blues minor league team based on the number of St. Louis prospects on that
We just
Czechia
have
side.
9 prospects in the tournament.
Yeah, and a ton of them on Czechia. Cam?
Yeah, it's been good. We're waiting for that showdown now, right? And both sides of the bracket, we imagined the U.S., Canada, Finland side was going to be the more difficult bracket, and then we thought Sweden was going to have an easier path to first onto that other side. But the Czechs, they've been pushing back. Hrabel's been really strong in net for them. They have some players, but what their kind of calling card is that they are a unit. They play strong defensively. They come at you in waves offensively. They don't have superstars out there, but they know how to finish and they know how to get to the net and they can get some of those greasy goals. Big win against their rivals Slovaks yesterday. I wish that was the game today, so I could get over and I could have saw it because I was over at the other rink and I missed it watching USA Finland. I always love to see two teams that don't like each other. So it's going to be a fun match. And like I said, is that the loser of this Canada-US game, they're going to end up third in their pool, which means they're playing number 2 on the other side, which is Sweden or Czechia. And that is not going to be an easy game for either US or Canada, whoever's going to be there. So there's a lot up for grabs on New Year's Eve, which is what we all wanted, right? When Canada lost Latvia, I was like, oh, that took the juice out of this New Year's Eve game. The juice is right back in the cup now, and I'm really excited for it.
Should be a fun day. Have yourself a happy New Year there in Ottawa. Cam, thank you for this, and we'll catch up next week, buddy.
Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk soon.